So yesterday I watched Edge of Tomorrow and it was really good. Really solid, fun, awesome summer blockbuster movie. But as a few of you may know already, and that I knew a long time ago, this movie was actually based on a Japanese light novel. For those who don't know what a Japanese light novel is, it's these short anime and video game inspired novels that typically are then adapted into anime and video games. In fact, most of the anime that's been coming out in the last 3 or 4 years has been just light novel adaptations. Well, I guess they really took off in like 2006, but they've gotten really prominent over the last few years. The original light novel in this case is All You Need Is Kill by Hiromu Sakurazaka, I think. All You Need Is Kill was a fun book. I read it years ago when it was printed over here in America by the Haikasoru imprint run by Viz. It had a great translation. Not that I've read the original, but the way that it's written in English is very cool. The basic premise is that it's about this guy who's a young guy. I think he was like 20 maybe in the original book. He's on the battlefield in this war that the humans are having against alien invaders, and the humans use these exosuits, which in the original are sort of presented as like mech suits, like it's a full thing that you get inside and it's like a mech suit you're wearing. There's cover art for the book is done by Yoshitoshi Abe, who happens to be one of my favorite artists. As you can see, I've got a few of his art books up here. I've got another one somewhere. But anyway, he pilots this exosuit into battle and he just keeps dying. But every time he dies, he wakes up back the previous day. He keeps repeating this cycle over and over again until the point where he's learned this battle like the back of his hand. And eventually he finds out that there's this woman called the Full Metal Bitch who is like the ultimate warrior on the battlefield, and it turns out that she previously had done something similar to him. She had been trapped in a time loop. And eventually they figure out how they're going to stop the war, kill all the aliens, and they have this huge final battle. I think they win. I don't remember the book that well. It's been a few years, and I would reread it, but I loaned it out to a friend somewhat recently, so I don't have it on me. But anyway, this book, what was most notable to me about it was that it did have an interesting sci-fi concept where the idea is kind of to adapt like the premise of a video game as if it were happening in a real-life war. Because the idea here is that the main character, as he dies and dies and dies, two things happen. One, he becomes increasingly more and more skilled at battle. He knows how to fight better than anyone because he's been doing it for what for him is years and years of repeating the same exact day. And the other thing is that he knows all the patterns of enemy movement. Like, he knows what's going to happen on this day so well because he's lived it so many times that every possibility of what could happen he now knows. So he knows when each enemy is going to jump at him. He knows, the timing of everything. And it's basically like playing through a video game on the highest difficulty over and over again. You keep building more and more skills at the game as well as memorizing the patterns of enemy movements and things like that. So you could say it's like playing Super Meat Boy on one of the harder levels where you just keep dying and dying and repeating until you get it right. So that's the basic premise, but what had made the book interesting to me was the writing style, because the main character was just this angry kid. He says fuck so many times in this book. There's this great monologue he gives at the beginning where it's like, fuck the brass for not sending enough fucking backup, fuck that guy over there for getting killed on the middle of the battlefield, fuck the enemy for laying you down with fire, fuck everything, fuck war. He's just going on and on and on. The original has this adrenaline pumping writing where the whole idea is that it's just anger and rage and war and combat, and it reads really fast. This book, I think I read it in like 5 hours, and I'm a pretty slow reader, so you can really just chug through this thing. Now, the book does hit a little bit of a snag as it goes into its third chapter. It's 4 large chapters, and the third one just has this huge exposition dump that like explains everything about the aliens and how they work, which kind of disrupts the pacing a little bit, but it was all pretty interesting information, and altogether, I'd say it's a great book. It's a very popcorn entertainment book. It's not like something that you're going to remember forever. So then I found out they're making a movie version out of it, a Hollywood movie of All You Need Is Kill, and they announced this years back, and I was like, whoa, cool, but I started to get worried pretty early on because the first thing I find out is it's gonna have Tom Cruise, and I'm like, well, Tom Cruise isn't a young dude. You can't put him as this young main character. Then as time went on, they changed the name to Edge of Tomorrow and they gave it a PG-13 rating. Now with the PG-13 rating, obviously they're not gonna say fuck constantly or have the kind of like gritty feeling that the book had, where the book was obviously meant to be sci-fi pulp, and the film just looked more like a generic sort of sci-fi action movie. So my expectations were pretty low. I was glad they changed the name so that it would not be considered a direct adaptation of the book. But overall, I had low expectations. Well, then the movie comes out, and it's getting all these great reviews. Film crit Hulk, who is my personal idol, loved the film, called it his favorite summer movie in years, and Movie Bob loved the movie, and sometimes I agree with him, so I was like, I gotta see this thing. And I did, and it's really, really good. In fact, if I'm being completely honest with myself, the film is better than the book. Because whereas the book did have that punk atmosphere that made it really cool, the film has better pacing, it has a more fleshed out version of the story, in spite of being altogether shorter than it would be to read the book. Because the book is more in the main character's head. It's more about his thoughts about everything that's going on. Whereas the film is able to do the main character's development in a subtle way, where even though we don't have a lot of scenes focused on him like explaining to us what he's all about, we see his development. It's a very show don't tell version of his character arc. And in the meantime, the film has a lot more characters, has a lot more interesting characters. It gets to do a lot more with the concept. Altogether, it just does a better job. The film takes more obvious influence from Groundhog's Day, where this plot obviously is the same as Groundhog's Day, where it's, you know, repeating the same day over and over again until you get it right. But in the film, it takes more of Groundhog's Day's mixture of like black comedy and drama that comes from living this day again and again. There's times where there's like a funny sequence where he keeps getting killed over and over again, but in a funny way. And then there's parts where it gets really dramatic, where, you know, he's grown so attached to the Full Metal Bitch because he's watched her die like countless times while steadily getting to know her as a person, that now he really gets emotionally fucked up when he realizes that he might not be able to save her in any timeline. The film has an amazing pace. It has this ebb and flow to it where there's parts where it can be really quickly snapping through a bunch of scenes because it's showing him die and die and die in like a montage form, but then we'll get like one full day. Like, we'll get him living through one version of events, but then that won't be the final one. Like, then we'll get through more and more montages, and the film just does such a great job of having those high-intensity moments and low-intensity moments throughout the film. It feels like this full, fulfilling experience. It's really well done. Some of the more competent sci-fi action scenes I've seen, I won't say it's quite on the level of District 9 because it doesn't have as cool of tech, but the first major battle in the film is like, I could comprehend everything that was happening even though it was showing how chaotic war is, and it felt like chaos, but you could tell what was happening. Some of the scenes later in the film, not so much, where it gets like really dark and they're trying to do the whole like, oh, we gotta make it dark so we can make the CG look better, and it looks kind of choppy, but it wasn't too much of a problem, and most of the movie looks really good. So altogether, I was just really satisfied with this film in a way that I would not have expected to be. I would recommend both All You Need Is Kill and Edge of Tomorrow. They're both great works for pretty different reasons. Edge of Tomorrow, definitely go see it while it's still in theaters. I've heard this movie is not making a lot of money. I've heard that it's kind of tanking, which sucks because I think most people just saw it as generic Tom Cruise movie, but you know, it's good. Go watch it. It's entertaining. If you like sci-fi action movies, you can't do much better than this. Now, there's more to All You Need Is Kill as well. There's also, I've seen that there is a manga adaptation and a comic book adaptation of the original novel. Like, I was in the store and there was an All You Need Is Kill book in the comic section written by American artists, and I flipped through it and it looked horrible. The artwork was just really uninspiring, so not sure I'd recommend that. I haven't really looked at the manga, but I can't imagine it's much better. So yeah, I don't know about those, but the book and movie, check them out. Endorse. I'm gonna fall down now.